All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for everybody who's been waiting. Um, we are live today with industrial designer and VR visual creator and experience creator Matt Whitby. Um, I actually went to school with him, and he's very talented in the world of VR and and creating experiences in VR and just all things design. And we're just going to get a real deep dive into his work and his workflow. But thank you for joining me today, Matt.
Thank you for having me. I felt very honored when you invited me to come along. So
Yeah, I'm glad to have you. And actually, you come up in my mind a few times, and so I'm glad you can get on because your work is so great. And we're gonna be doing a new thing today where we're gonna show you videos in Gravity Sketch, and so and Matt will narrate through the process. And I think it'd be pretty cool. Let us know what you guys think of that and how it works for you as a viewer. Yeah, so let's just get started here. Well, first things off, Matt, why don't you just introduce everybody or let everybody know who you are and introduce yourself?
Yeah, so my name is Matt Whitby, and as Jaron had said, I've been working in the virtual reality field for about going on 3 years now, pretty much since I started using Gravity Sketch. And I've kind of gone all over the place. I've worked on virtual projects, games, and all kinds of kind of design-related experiences, and as well as I've been building things. So I've been creating electronics projects throughout the years. And so it's kind of gone between virtual and physical for the past couple of years. But I'm here in Cincinnati, Ohio, and I live with my wife and 2 cats.
Awesome. Yeah, and it's kind of amazing. This is something that I think I've maybe said every live, but it's just amazing that we can chat in like a virtual space and sort of in a way be together again, virtually. And
Yeah.
so I think that's just pretty cool. But yeah, thank you again, Matt, for joining us. And yeah, we'll get right into it. So first thing I just want to ask you is, how did you get into design, or what was your journey in even coming into the world of design and creating things? What was that journey like? I know it's kind of an open question, but what was that like for you?
Yeah. So it really started in making things. So when I was in high school, I didn't even really know about industrial design, and it's kind of the classic story with a lot of people you talk to in industrial design, where it's like they were going to go into engineering, and then found out industrial design, and then immediately switched. And for me, it was I've always viewed design or making things kind of as this stepping stone process to being able to create bigger and better stuff. So I was originally going to go into electrical engineering, and I loved learning about electronics and building Arduino related projects. And I always viewed like learning the next thing as the ability to create something even cooler. So I wanted to learn electronics to give objects and things behaviors and being able to have sensors and robotics and things. And it was about in senior year, I met a guy at a local makerspace in Dallas, where I'm from, and he kind of introduced me to industrial design and to the whole like history and world of it. And I was really encapsulated by what is possible, and the fact that it was also project related, and I didn't have to sit in lectures as much because I really enjoyed just getting really hands on. So yeah, it started in making things, and then over the years now it's transitioned from making physical things into making digital things. So it's been an exciting process to kind of learn more about this industry and kind of see how it's been adapting over the years, and be a part of adapting it into this digitally focused area now. So yeah, that's sort of the abridged version of how I got into it. But
Awesome. Do you want me to show a little clip of that? I think that one of the clips you sent me was something you did that was related to programming a robot.
yeah, we can show that a little bit later. So that gets into some of
Okay.
the visual stuff.
Okay. Sure.
But yeah, the some of the projects I had worked on in the beginning were like I built a little Segway, and I've used to work on like robotics type projects, and so a lot of it had to do. That was even before I had learned anything about building anything in VR, and it was all just trying to build physical things. But yeah, I'll show that a little bit later once I talk a little bit more about the VR, moving into VR design.
Awesome. Yeah, that sounds great. Well, and also, I just want to say, if you want to make yourself a little bit larger and in front of the head, just so people can see you, um, I think you're kind of inside your little. Yeah, there you go. And
There you
people,
go.
Matt imported this awesome head of himself, so you can all see what he looks like. So, thanks for bringing that in. And you might notice a few things here. We've got a vehicle. We'll be diving into that. And I believe that's for your VR game that you built, right?
Yes, so that's part of a game called Planet Picnic that a friend and I developed a couple semesters ago.
Yeah.
But yeah,
That'd be awesome. Well, let me just ask you something else. You know, what was the process of discovering VR? I mean, I think you maybe covered it a little bit, but getting involved in VR and you really headed down that direction. And I think if I were to observe, you know, as a viewer in your journey, it seems to make sense because there's a lot of coding, there's a lot of structure involved. It's almost like making things in real life, but you're doing it, I don't know, virtually, I guess.
yeah, yeah,
If you want to talk about that.
definitely. So it actually started. It started at UC, and it was when I first got to kind of really play around with some of the VR tools. And the first one I ever played around with was Gravity Sketch. And one of the professors at UC, Antonio, he really introduced me to it and was kind of just like, hey, we have these headsets, we have this really early facility that we're trying to create. And he gave me the password and he's like, you just go crazy with it. And so that was sort of my first introduction. And I got hooked once I started using Gravity Sketch and could see the potential of what you could build, just even if it was just static at the time. And it wasn't long after that my friend and I, he had the computer and I had some money. And so we ended up buying a Vive together. And ever since then, I've just been kind of experimenting and playing with what is possible with VR. And a lot of it, and I can show some of the pictures that I have here kind of describing some of the earlier work, but a lot of it in the beginning was kind of using it as a way of visualizing how to create things. And so I'll show a picture here of one of my first internships that I did was with Chamberlain Group, which was it's a garage door opening company. And one of the things that we did actually was create this whole kind of like IoT smart solution for creating an opener for a warehouse facility. And I was really passionate about trying to bring VR and bring AR into this space however I could. So I brought my Vive. They let me set it up at my desk. And I was sitting there. Everyone thought I was playing games at the time, but I was sitting there, working on Gravity Sketch. And I was just trying to, like, these sketches kind of showcase this where I was trying to understand sort of the engineering behind the prototype that we were going to build. So I did these sort of like napkin sketches around how I would 3D print and kind of build the button mechanisms and where the wires would go. And that was really exciting because I had worked on some electronics projects before, and figuring out how to wire things inside of a box is always challenging. So using the drawing tool and just literally like routing the wires to the different circuit boards in this prototype we were building was really helpful. So this is sort of kind of like my first foray into kind of using VR sketching as one of my tools in my design process.
It's so amazing that this was like your first thing that you kind of went to in VR, but it just makes so much sense though when you think about it. But it's just amazing because most people they play around, which I'm sure you did, and a lot of it's just like art and kind of crazy stuff. But like VR just totally when you show me this, like it just makes sense. Like of course like you would want to like use VR to route cables because it's three-dimensional. It's really hard to do like anything that's path or cable related in like a traditional 2D software. I mean, I really couldn't imagine doing that in anything but VR, to be honest.
Yeah.
But that's incredible. And so to me, this definitely merges those two worlds of like engineering and like your discovery of VR and your love. Would you say this is kind of like where your love for VR began, pretty much?
Yeah. I really think so. Like I've one of the challenges I've had sort of as sort of a creative person throughout the years is it's really hard for me just to like sit down and sketch, right? I've never been the type of person that can just like sit down and do something. But when I'm handed a project or I'm handed a prompt, that's when I find I'm my most creative. So when it was this project and sort of the underlying design challenge personally was how can I use VR to figure out how to design this object? That's when I was finding all these different ways of using VR. I had some AR things I was doing with Gravity Sketch at the same time. So that's why I've always found it to be really fun. That was sort of my challenge in first getting into Gravity Sketch was I was like, I would sit down and I would go into the completely white environment. I'm like, well, what do I do now? and then once I got into the internship, that really changed it. And I was like, wow, I can route cables, I can figure out the circuit boards, I can bring in SolidWorks models and kind of create an assembly. And so that, yeah, it was really game changing working at Chamberlain and seeing the sort of the practical applications within industrial design and being able to almost sell it to them as well in some respects.
Yeah. It's amazing. Yeah, well, let me just ask you another question. I think this is a good segue into this question. I just want to get your thoughts on how you see VR changing the way we create and express our ideas. Just wondering what your thoughts are on VR and on just it as a medium, as a platform in general, basically for creatives and maybe non-creatives as well.
Yeah. So it's a really interesting question because there's so many facets to this. And one of the things that I've seen in my own personal career, and actually in preparing for this interview, I was looking through all my different projects and Gravity Sketch stuff I've worked on. And I was just amazed of how impactful Gravity Sketch has been to my creative process over the past 3 years. And like there was all kinds of examples. I had examples where I was using it for engineering. I had examples where I was doing level design and other ones where I was creating creatures. What I found that what was so amazing about VR is it really gives you the ability to visualize and create things that you never thought I could before, right? And I'll show you, like, so this was one of the, let's blow this up here.
Yeah.
So this was one of the levels that we created for the Planet Picnic game. And none of us had experience in sort of concept art. None of us had experience in doing level design. But what I found was Gravity Sketch really gave us the ability to democratize this skill to us where, I don't know if I'd necessarily get a job in concept art, but it helped me kind of develop that idea and visualize it. And I don't really think that I could have done this without this tool. And that's what I find that's so amazing with VR is it's democratizing the communication of ideas. When I worked at, I don't know if I'd necessarily get a job when I worked at Kaleidoscope a couple semesters ago during the summer, and they're a traditional kind of product design consultancy. One of the things that I found really amazing is I was bringing Gravity Sketch in there, doing the same thing I kind of did with Chamberlain and trying to figure out ways I could use it. And the people that really latched onto Gravity Sketch and really wanted to bring it in was the engineers. And they were really excited because the designers had the ability to be able to communicate their ideas. They were trained in that for years, and they could create beautiful visuals. But the engineers always kind of struggled with like drawing up their ideas and being able to communicate it in the same way. And when I showed them Gravity Sketch, I was like, oh, you want to show a spring? I can sketch a spring right here. You want to show how this spring moves in relation to another object and how that like mechanism works? You can just grab it and puppet it. And immediately, even though this is low fidelity, you get the idea. So they really loved that. And so that was kind of my kind of eye-opening moment where this is the power of VR. Or you could really never. It makes something that is so challenging and takes years way easier for somebody to come in and be able to communicate those ideas. And that's what really excites me is what ideas are we going to get to see? Who's going to be able to build these new products, new services, new experiences because this tool allows them the ability to kind of communicate or visualize that. So yeah, that's really the what I've seen over the years with VR and its ability to allow us to express and communicate.
So it seems like what I'm getting, is like it's a tremendous learning tool, is what you're saying as well, like a teaching and learning tool, and a way to just convey complex ideas as easy as it is as being there in person, one-to-one, and just saying, hey, look, this is the thing, this is how it works, and there's no walls of text, no paragraphs, no 50 screenshots or sketches to like explain something. You know, it's right there. Do you get it? And it's like, oh yeah, I get it. And then you like move. It's just it's completely 100% just natural, basically innate understanding 3D space.
Yeah, definitely, and that's sort of that's really the beauty of it. I mean, I can show, like, I really feel like over the past years, it's like this was one of my first kind of dives into kind of creating these like sort of virtual museums. And I have a video we can show with this too. And I was really experimenting. I was like, I've never built a space before. I was just like, I want to build a kind of a virtual museum to showcase one of my projects. And so I was like, well, I'll go into Gravity Sketch and I'll try to start mocking this stuff up. And so I was able to really easily kind of build this space, even though it's not the best looking space. Like it allowed me to kind of visualize this and create it really easily, and then be able to stand there, see how the scale works, see what this environment would feel like. And even though it was all digital and it's going to be a VR experience, like it was incredibly empowering. So that, yeah, to me, it's VR is an incredibly empowering tool, and has allowed me to not only showcase things that I wouldn't have been able to showcase before, but also be able to think in a different way, be able to think in a more holistic way about a project and about a process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you could let me know, what's the name of the video for this? If I could just maybe play it really quickly for everybody.
Yeah, it is, let's see, Volo Shift VR exhibit. That's what it's called.
There we are. Let me just rewind that. I know you can't see, but if you look at the stream, you'll be able to see it.
Okay.
Yeah, so everybody watching, we're just going to play this little video here. And if you could just explain again what this is.
Yeah.
So I've just clicked play on it.
Okay, there's a little bit of a lag, so I might.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, just now click play. But so essentially, in the industrial design program at UC, or University of Cincinnati, they have a project that focuses around developing a power tool. And this was sort of our first project that we really got to develop completely on our own. And so given the fact that I've been trying to get into the VR space and kind of designing for that, decided to do a VR controller. And I experimented with that semester of trying to showcase the whole process of design in VR. And instead of doing, so normally we'd do like a poster at the end. Instead of doing that, I built this little kind of VR exhibit museum that you could kind of see and get to interact with the process of this project. And so it's kind of the whole thing around this project was basically creating a VR multi-tool, and you'd be able to hold the VR controller in different ways and populate different tools based off of how you held it. But it was really exciting to get to make like an exploded view that you could stick your head in and look around at the different components and kind of create these mock-ups of how the UI and stuff would work for this tool. So yeah, this was my first dive into Unity and into developing virtual experiences, and there was very little coding at this time. It was just getting to work. But yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you about some of the other tools that you use. So you mentioned Unity. How have you found using Unity in your workflow? Why do you use Unity? Just talk a little bit about some of the other tools that you use.
Yeah, so I kind of have been going between Unity and Unreal, and sort of earlier on I was using Unity and kind of learning the text-based coding and C# and stuff to be able to build projects. And recently I've started to switch into Unreal. And starting to use more of the node-based approach. And really, it depends on just what project I'm working on. And if I find myself if I'm working on like an AR type project, I use Unity. If I'm working on something more visual, I use Unreal. And a lot of the stuff I was working on a little bit earlier, which we can show some of those videos too, the Ant and the Apple, like VR mini experience and stuff like that. I was also experimenting with sort of the interplay of digital objects and virtual objects And I find that Unity was really great with doing that. And I could set up, Vive. I had the little Vive tracker puck that could basically build your own controllers. And I built a little robot that you could drive around with. And so I've kind of focused in around, like, if it's visually related, then I usually use Unreal. If it has to do something with sort of hardware integration, I find that Unity is a little bit better, a little bit easier for me. But those are sort of the gaming engines. And now at the time, I actually did a lot of the modeling for this experience in Fusion and Gravity Sketch. But now I've kind of shifted into using Blender a lot more in creating experiences. And this little truck here, this was all modeled in Blender, and it was planned in Gravity Sketch and modeled in Blender.
If you're a creative or if you're a designer and you don't really have experience with like a game sort of software, like these gaming these I don't even want to call them game programs, because they're even beyond games, but these programs where you basically build interaction and build experiences, like on Unreal and Unity, which one would you recommend to someone that maybe doesn't really have experience with coding or any of that stuff, but they want to make interactions, they want to make their things come alive that they create in 3D?
Yeah, I think so. After I started diving into Unreal, I really realized that platform, that gaming engine, is sort of the easier one to get into initially. And that's because you don't have to deal with C# and learning the different syntax associated with it. And it's all node-based. And the challenge is still there. Right? You still have to kind of learn how to think like a programmer. You have to kind of learn this whole other way, really a whole other language to kind of speak in. But the difference is you don't have to learn like how to write it. It's all written for you, basically, and you can kind of assemble it. And so that's what the real advantage I found with Unreal. And also one of the reasons I switched from Unity into Unreal was I wanted to get into kind of creating custom shaders or materials. And I wanted to make either animated materials. I wanted to create all kinds of really interesting materials for UI and for kind of better looking experiences. And I started looking into Unity's way of doing it. And you kind of had two different methods. You had the experimental kind of node-based approach, which was still not fully fleshed out at the time. And then you had, text-based, where you're actually writing shaders. And it was incredibly confusing and complex. Yeah. And I was like, this is crazy. So I decided to, at that point, kind of jump into Unreal's environment too, because there was a lot more tutorials on the materials. Their node-based material creation tool was a little bit, it had been around a lot longer, so there's more videos and more resources. So yeah, long-winded explanation to basically say, if you're starting out, I now recommend kind of using Unreal as sort of a first tool. But,
got it. Yeah, it's Unreal's amazing. They're both amazing in their own respective ways. Just from some of the things that I've seen. Well, why don't we just go right into some of the experiences that you've made in VR? I know people will really love to see that. Is there one that you wanted to kind of start off with to take people through and show them sort of your journey?
Yeah, let's start with Planet Picnic, since I have the model here, and we can kind of start running through that.
Do you want me to? I think there's just one Planet Picnic video, right?
Yeah, it's a little bit longer of a video, so we can just have that kind of playing in the background.
Yeah, I'm just going to blow it up here.
Let's see.
I'm going to rewind it too.
Okay.
So it's just playing now, but you can go ahead. It just started playing.
Mm-hmm. So this project, I believe it was around, I looked at the video when we posted it was 9 months ago. But my friends and I kind of worked on creating this, and I worked with Andy Ticknor, who helped me do some concept development and 3D creation and work on this project, and Amanda Howe, who helped with kind of the wearables portion and kind of designing that experience. And basically what we were trying to do, it was sort of our first kind of dive into building a game. And I kind of wanted to try out what it was like to actually design and build a game. And so we went through a whole process of kind of starting from what the game mechanism was. So we created a bunch of action verbs, and we were like cooking, stealing, lying, like all these different kind of wild action verbs. And we started mixing and matching them together to try to create like these little weird phrases that would kind of help be a starting point for how we kind of built this concept. And then we would create, based off these little phrases, we would create stories around them and try to think of wild worlds that would encapsulate how this phrase would make sense. And with this one, we were looking at, I think it had to do something with cooking and it was like cooking, food trucks, and something else. The phrase itself was a little tamer, but kind of had a really interesting idea of wanting to incorporate multiple players into it. And so this game itself is actually a multiplayer experience, and you have one person in VR and one person in on the PC. And we created this whole steering wheel and a physical 3D printed steering wheel and a pedal, and we wired it up with Arduinos, and so you could actually drive this vehicle around. And then inside of it, you would be a little robot, and you could actually kind of prepare your picnic items. And so you'd have to like run into, and these are actually some of the trees from that game. And so you'd have to run into these trees and to knock them over. And then if the tree got on top of this little truck, then you could pick them from inside. And so it was amazing. We were playing with all kinds of kind of fun ways of gathering resources and focusing in on interaction throughout the entire process. So it was a really fun project. It was a lot of work, and we had very little time to do it, but it was a lot of fun.
That's amazing.
And we can see two here. I'm not sure how we can do this with the camera, but this, we can explore the inside of this truck a little bit too, since we have it here.
Yeah. Okay. I'll close the video, and then I'm going to switch the camera to myself, and we'll dive right in there.
Sweet. Yeah, and one of the things I want to say too is I showed a little bit earlier with the level development that we used Gravity Sketch for, but we also used Gravity Sketch to kind of lay out this interior space and try to understand how we could place these mechanisms and devices. Let's see. You ready for me to?
Yeah, go right ahead.
All right, welcome inside. Yeah, so we kind of went in and we kind of sketched out a very rough kind of iteration of where we wanted things to be, and from a design standpoint, we wanted to kind of focus in on this sort of left to right 360 design. So we wanted the steps of the process all to be next to each other. So you start here, you would grab, we would kind of grab this picnic basket, mm-hmm. right? And then as things were kind of like, if the resources were up here, you'd grab it, and then you would then take it, you would process it with one of these machines, and then you would place it in your basket, and you would move on to the next step, and then move to the next step. So we wanted each step to kind of be right next to the player on the right, and so you kind of moved around the space in a 360 motion. That's kind of what we were going for to make this space a little bit more recognizable or easier to understand. And so we had, like, this was a little juicer, so you could place apples and oranges and things and juice it by pulling it down. We had a slicer here that you could place the fruit here and then push it down and it would slice it. And then we had a cheeser, which is a fictional machine, but we wanted it, just for it being kind of outlandish, you have these cows and you would hit the cows and they would get on top of the vehicle, and so you could milk the cows. It was all, the udders were physics enabled, and so you could kind of milk the udders and then place the milk into this tray. And when you placed it back in and turned it, it would output a little block of cheese.
That's
to
amazing.
Make cheese. Yeah.
This is incredible.
Once you were finished, you would take the basket, you would place it into this slingshot, and then you'd pull it back and shoot it to the aliens. And we had this whole narrative around this being an alien vacation spot, and you were humans taken to try to, to make human food for the aliens and
I love
have a
it.
wild backstory.
It's an amazing
Yeah.
concept. It's so unique, and it's just amazing that all this interaction was built in, and I believe what. So which part did you do? Did you? I think you built in some of the interactions. You also made the models. I think you mentioned.
Mhm.
You did some of the interaction, right?
Yeah, so I programmed, at this time I had to program it all custom. So I created the whole system
It's amazing.
behind how all the objects spawned and the gaming mechanics, and then
Yeah.
programmed in all of the interactions for here. And so I had to basically build my own interaction engine for this, which was one of the really difficult parts, especially since the vehicle moved, and I didn't really anticipate how hard that would be, of having the object move and also being able to interact with it. So I had a lot of frustrating nights trying to figure out how that could work. But
um,
yeah.
that's just incredible. And I think somebody asked here in the comments. They said, Capaholic. He says, "Is that game available or just a project demo?" So is it a game that people can download, or is it not? Basically.
No, it is not. We debated for a bit, and I think I'm feeling a little bit better about actually trying to finish it. At the time, I was like, I am done with. I cannot do this anymore. But no, for right now, it's just a project. One of the things that we have to do, because we built this, which is actually modeled after. So this is kind of the steering wheel. So this was the actual Fusion 360 model that we 3D printed. And so
Nice.
right now the game is set up so you have to have this steering wheel and the pedal and to be able to play it. So it would need some adaptation to kind of allow it to be used without the steering wheel. But yeah, that was always one of our goals, was eventually to post it. And I'm thinking now that I know a little bit more about Unreal, I was like, I could probably just recreate it in Unreal pretty quickly. So, but yeah, unfortunately it's not publicly available.
Yeah, that's yeah, somebody was just asking. I would love it if it were available at some point. Obviously, I understand you have probably other things in your plate, but you showed me the video of it. I think a while back, and it just looks like so much fun. I think if you did put it out, people would love to play this game. But
Yeah, thanks.
yeah, it's amazing. This is great. Um,
Thank you.
it's yeah. The So just to reiterate for anybody that's joining as well, so this entire model was made in Blender, and I think you said you blocked it in. I think first in Gravity Sketch, built it in Blender, did all the custom coding, custom interactions. I think the engine is Unity for this, right?
Yes, this was a Unity project.
Yeah, and yeah, it's just incredible, and so it kind of reminds me of Job Simulator in a way, as far as like feel, general feel and maybe interactions and all of that. And I think that's just such a fun way of, I think, getting introduced to VR. Honestly, anybody that just wants to do something fun and also like learn how to be in VR and do things. Things that are very physically based, based on physics, and things that if you do this, it does something, and it teaches you in VR that your space is is dictated by how you interact with it. Let's see here. Let's check out the comments. Also, the same person that commented, they said that they're north of Dayton, so they're relating to relating.
That's awesome.
Yeah, they're relating to location. So, but yeah, this is amazing. I'm gonna get some shots around the outside of this thing too, so people can see.
I unfortunately ungrouped it all to grab individual objects, so it's going to be a little bit of a nightmare now to move it here. But yeah, and this little thing at the front was supposed to be kind of like the catapult, right? So when these trees would come up, it would launch it up, and then this would hold it in the top like that.
That's amazing.
That was kind of the idea.
I just love all of the details like that you've thought about, all the interaction and all of the just all the points of things that will happen in the game. I just think that's so cool and so creative.
Thank you.
Let's see. Was there any other videos from this project that you wanted to show?
That's the main one. So that was kind of the full sort of trailer that we built for it. But I can go ahead and show some other experiences as well.
Yeah. Let's do it.
I'm just gonna delete it. I can always.
I'll help you delete.
Clear the table here. I've got a wheel. Let's see. So that was sort of the later on VR experience. One of the other ones I can show too is the
I'm gonna reset the camera too as well, real quick.
Okay. I can bring up some photos while you're doing that.
There we go.
Okay, so I have some photos here, but we also have that video. It's called a VR drone simulation. So yeah, this was sort of this project. The VR drone simulation was one of the first ones that I did that involved actual interaction. Before then, it was just at museum, and this was a really fun project. It involved, once again, kind of creating virtual and physical objects. And it was a team project. I worked with Hunter Elmore to kind of build this, and he focused in on. He's really, really talented in form development and automotive and industrial like product design, and so he designed the drone itself, and then I kind of took his model and built this whole experience within sort of how you would fly it, how you'd interact with it, and so. We were looking at sort of this kind of idea of building this sort of virtual or drone racing kind of esports combined experience where you'd have a physical drone that you raced around and you were racing against virtual opponents and virtual objectives and things, and you could have virtual spectators in it, and just kind of playing around with that concept. And then what we ended up doing was I kind of created, and I had some models of this, but I think it would kind of crash. But what I did was focused on not only building the virtual experience, but also building this kind of virtual buck or physical buck, and using the Vive tracker puck, kind of built out this custom controller, and it had a weight in it back here. It had a bunch of Ren foam weight in the back, and you could. The idea was that you're supposed to fly like Superman in this drone. So when you pushed your hands forward, you would go forward. If you pushed your hands up, you would go up. And it was supposed to almost be like this motorcycle type experience, and you could fly around. And so it was in Gravity Sketch, and this whole process too was really exciting because I went through and actually mocked up this physical prototype up in Gravity Sketch first to kind of see how I would mill it. And then went to Fusion 360 and created these part lines and got it CNC milled at our school mill, and built out 3D printed all these little components and things, and wired up a little switch in there so you could actually press the trigger and shoot missiles out and try to shoot little targets as you flew around. So it was a really fun project, and there were some other parts of the project where I actually got to experiment with kind of using Unity and VR as a design tool. So I actually built in some. I don't know if I still have the 3D models in here. Well, I don't want to end up stalling it. But I built out this arena, and I had about 10 people fly this drone using different control systems through this arena, and tracked their speed. I tracked how quickly they completed the objectives, and then kind of got sort of real world feedback on what was the most intuitive controls and how did people kind of understand how to fly this system. And so that was really fun to actually get to use VR as sort of this user testing platform.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Should I play the video?
Yeah.
It's
I keep forgetting that I can't see the video.
Yeah, I know.
I have to turn around and look.
It's playing now, trust me. This is another game I would love to play. It looks so fun.
Yeah, this one's still up at UC right now, and still works, fortunately.
Awesome. And this is Unity as well, right?
Yes, this was all Unity, and this is before I had kind of learned Blender. So I took one of the I took sort of this model pack of kind of sci-fi building blocks, and then built out this whole city, and planned it in Gravity Sketch at first to kind of see how I'd want it to flow, and then kind of kit bashed this whole city together. Um, and so yeah, it was a really really fun project. And I'm still like right now. Before COVID, I was actually working on a project when I was working at UC, trying to basically redo this. But unfortunately, COVID hit and kind of stopped some of that. But yeah, that was it.
Someone said, I've always wondered why nobody made a point of view drone racing game. VR is perfect for it, and I agree. A point of view or a third person view racing game in VR just makes so much sense. Like a drone
Yeah,
racing game.
it was good fun. So it's a little deceiving because in VR you're actually inside of that drone, and then for the sake of actually showing it, I did
Yeah.
a third person view camera on the outside. And a lot of that was due to I had some with this too. I had some real problems with motion sickness. People it was very hit or miss. Some people they would do it, they'd love it. Other
Yeah.
people would do it for 2 seconds and they're like, I'm gonna throw up, and they had to take it off. So that was sort of a challenge with this. But I've been noticing a trend within VR games recently where they're kind of just doing it and then hoping for the best.
Yeah, it kind of
Having
reminds
reviews outside of
me.
it and stuff.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of this free. I think it's still free game you can get off the Oculus store, which is called Air Car. And
Yeah.
I love that game, but if I show it to, I've showed it to some of my folks, and they it's kind of tough because
Yeah.
because of all the motion and everything. But yeah, it's brilliant. I love it. It looks so much fun.
Thank you. Yeah, and let's see. Let's walk through one of the other. These are sort of like the three bigger projects. A lot of the other videos are kind of like short mini experiences that I created. But if you want to go to the Fordzilla intern experience, we can walk through that. That one's a really long video, so we don't have to go through the whole thing, and we can maybe skip ahead at some points in it. But I can kind of walk through what that project was. That was also a really, really fun project. That was fairly recent.
Yeah, this is great. I've just started to play it now. I'm just kind of letting it
Okay.
play, but I can scrub through it too if you want.
Yeah, so I'll talk through it a little bit, then we can probably scrub through it. So this past summer, I had the opportunity to work at Ford for the summer, and I worked with a group of interns. I actually worked with Hunter Elmore again, which was really fun, and I'm working with him now again. So we've been working together for practically 2 or 3 years. But basically, we because of COVID, we had to go to a completely virtual internship, and this is the first time they've ever tried anything like this, and so we were sort of an experiment. And one of the plus sides of this is the negatives was that we couldn't work on anything proprietary. The positive was that we actually could work on we could work on a publicly available project. So I can show this, we can talk about it, and all of it can be in our portfolio. So that was really great, and we got to use tools that normally we wouldn't be able to use. And so what we did was we worked within the Fordzilla universe, which is their esports team. And there's a whole project going on Instagram if you want to check it out. It's really awesome to see some of their designers building these virtual race cars. And so they basically tasked us during the summer, build something in this universe. And so we each of the interns had different experiences, different strong suits, and so I, coming from the virtual reality experience, kind of focused in on building this experience, which was sort of a conceptual design studio to an extent, and I wanted to experiment with, given the virtual nature of this internship, how could we showcase and kind of walk through the design process using Unreal and it being completely interactive. And so I took the work of Hunter, of Naheem, and Sean, and kind of adapted it into this 3D experience. And so I created these. Each person had their own 3 different rooms. They would have sort of a mood room, so it was similar to kind of how you would make a reference board of images that's your inspiration for your form. In this case, I created a 3D representation of that and took some of their image references and created these 3D environments that you could experience. And then also created sort of their iterations. And so each person created a series of different 3D iterations, whether that be through Gravity Sketch or Blender, and built a way for them to actually walk through their different iterations. And so for Naheem, who worked on the interior, we had this more intimate, like kind of interaction where you could actually sit inside of the interior. And then for Sean and Hunter, who did exterior, we kind of built this showroom, which you'll see a little bit later on. And the whole idea was, how could we show the design process using VR? And one of the things that we got to do that was really exciting was I actually got to make their vehicles drivable. So later on in this video,
cool.
we could scrub to that point too. I built this test track, and then I rigged up their vehicle so that way you could actually interact with the UI and you could drive it around this track, and it had a little lap timer and speedometer on it and stuff. So that was really fun. And one of the things we got to do in this project as well was actually we designed a lot of this using Gravity Sketch Co-Sketch, and we would be, because we were virtual, was the perfect opportunity. So we would be like, I worked with Naheem quite closely on developing the UI for the vehicle. And so we would be sitting there for hours working off of each other's work, and he would do an idea, create a line, I would come back in and kind of refine it or move it or change it. And that was incredibly fun. So it was a really interesting experiment in working virtually using VR. And getting to really play around with Unreal in this experience. But in the video now, that kind of showcases, this is showing the actual driving. Well, I say that, but it's the delayed on YouTube video. But yeah, so that it was a really fun project. Once again, a lot of work. We only had, I think, 8 weeks, but it was really 6 weeks.
I just can't believe that this was done in that amount of time.
Yes, it was quite a crazy summer trying to get this done in 6 weeks, and that tends to be the reoccurring theme with most of my projects. Is I have really big ideas but very little time to do them. So.
I can relate. I tend to do the same thing, and then and then execution becomes sometimes a problem. But yeah, it's amazing. It's incredible. It's just a little detail, but I love the solution for when you're driving and you want to restrict vision. It's like this sort of hexagon grid that covers the basically the canopy. It's really kind of a cool solution for that. I just thought that was really nice. But it's amazing, designing for VR in VR. It's like VRception.
Yeah.
It's it really it's like the ultimate sort of way of designing experiences. I mean, you don't have to really write. You don't have to draw something and here this is what I'm trying to do, and then or do you get this or build in 3D? It's like you just do it in VR. And then the extra layer of collaboration to that, which I thought was amazing that you all did, was using Co-Sketch and Gravity Sketch to actually basically create together and say, no, actually, you probably were placing things and explaining interactions, and it's just to me just like the ultimate way to work, I think.
Yeah, it really was. It was, not everybody used fully Gravity Sketch, but even if somebody didn't fully model their vehicle in Gravity Sketch, I mean, we could bring it in Blender and then do design reviews, and it was really fun. It felt like we were just kind of experimenting with all kinds of different things, and that it was really fun to be able to get to have that opportunity. And and we kind of walked away from it thinking, where it was really challenging in that it being a virtual internship and not necessarily having the opportunity to actually go to Ford and get to see that, we got to work with stuff that we wouldn't have been able to work with before, and got to experiment with tools and processes that we wouldn't have been able to in that. And so it was a really great opportunity, really fun project.
It's awesome. Somebody's asking, is that built in Unreal Engine 4? Is that built in Unreal Engine 4 too? I'll answer real quick. Everything else that we've shown so far was Unity, I believe. Was this Unreal Engine?
Yes, this was Unreal Engine.
Yeah.
This was.
And is that because there was more, visual tools that were just conducive to the project? Is that why? Basically, why did you choose Unreal Engine over Unity for this particular project?
Yeah, so the biggest reason was being able to have a higher level of visuals easier. And there's always a debate within Unity and Unreal, and you have diehard Unity fans that say that you do all the same things you can do in Unreal, and the Unity the same thing. And it all comes down, for me personally, in kind of working between the two different softwares, it just came down to how can I create something that looks the best, the quickest. Given the fact that most of my projects also are in an extremely short time frame, that was really important. So I find that Unreal, like the ability to create really high quality visuals quickly, is just so much easier for me and so much easier to understand. Mm-hmm. And while it is possible to do that in Unity, it's just a lot. I find it to be a lot more technical, and that's been sort of the challenge of making things look really great in Unity versus making things look really great in Unreal. And
would you say that Unity is maybe where you want to experiment with functions and with interactions and get really into the sandbox realm of interaction VR, and then Unity and then Unreal Engine you want some, if you want something to look just stunning, you want it to look beautiful and you want it to just look eye-catching, then you just more go the Unreal route? Is that how maybe you would roughly categorize it?
Yeah, to an extent, yeah. I think one of the benefits too of using Unity is that the projects tend to be way lighter. And when I started diving into Unreal, I found quite quickly that my computer, I still do everything with an Alienware laptop. I don't have a tower or anything. And I found quite quickly that my computer is not going to be, my storage is not large enough to deal with the file sizes of Unreal projects. And now my projects are like in Unreal. I think that project was like 35 gigs, 40 gigs. It was giant. And Unity projects are like a fraction of that. And so it really it gets really technical and kind of the differences. And I find that, you summarize it pretty well, at least for me, in that I find that Unity is sort of that open sandbox, and you can kind of add what you need to add, and it's way lighter, versus Unreal kind of comes in with all of these different tools and abilities, and it's way heavier and bigger. But if you need those tools, it's great. If you don't need it and you need it very stripped down and can kind of build all that up from the ground up, like I find that Unity is kind of a little bit better for that. But it's kind of hard to say. I mean, they're both becoming very similar. It's really hard to say nowadays. I mean, they're both really great engines, and really my main switch happened because when I started working for Vector, which is a VR company here in Cincinnati, and they work on a number of different VR related projects, but they work with kind of microaggressions in the workplace and training people how to identify that, and training how to identify bias within the workplace using VR. And so it was they use Unreal. So they were like, "We're going to have to learn it if you want to work here." And I was like, "Okay."
Yeah.
So that was one of the major factors too at the time. But, yeah,
it's just incredible. I see Michael Smith has joined us. He said, "Kind of wish Matt would get an Instagram account so we could feature his work from the past summer." I agree. I think you need to get on there and show this stuff. It's incredible. He also says #Team Fordzilla. So
yes,
but I 100% agree on that. But of course, that's up to you, Matt. But I just think it's.
I'll look into it. I need to. I've been meaning to post things on Twitter. That's been the
Yeah.
platform, but yeah, I for now I
Yeah.
have a website and I use a lot with Vimeo. I have a lot of my
Yeah,
videos on.
if
But
anyone wants to check out Matt's work, we've put in the description of this a link to your Vimeo as well as a link to your website, and if you want to see more of Matt's work. So, but yeah, get out there on Twitter and Instagram because I know people would love this stuff. But of course, I don't want to pressure you. You don't have to. Not everybody has to be on Instagram. So but. It's incredible work. It's amazing, and yeah, thank you just so much for showing all this incredible work. You have a few models down on here. Did you want to talk about those? Were those for something, or were those just for fun?
yeah, I can show. So these are more visual stuff. This was a drone project I worked on, and I can show some of these renders that I did, and I just wanted to bring in some of these little models, but. Yeah, this was just fun. One of the things I love Gravity Sketch for is showcasing products and things through environments, and that's one of the things I started doing in my portfolio is actually like building these little mini environments that that then I can kind of like almost like I'm looking at them on the table.
Try bringing this one in again. This one just is not loading. It's just purple.
Oh. Let me try it.
But these are good. You can see these. Oh yeah, there you go. Now there it is.
Yeah, that one's the thumbnail there, and then these ones were. So this is kind of like this project. I used Gravity Sketch to kind of initially lay out sort of the design for the drone, and then I modeled some of it in Blender, and then brought it in. And I love going into Gravity Sketch, taking models, and basically getting to make these little miniature setups, so I can render them in Keyshot. So that's kind of what I did in here. Is I just like made these 3D models, brought them in, and then arranged them in Gravity Sketch to then render later on. But yeah, so that's kind of what these are from. The whole project was around
so cool.
Like maintaining boar populations and how we could do that. And so there's all kinds of kind of crazy wild concepts. But yeah, it was just one of these a fun project to kind of play around with techniques of visualizing it and showcasing it using kind of like a spatial approach. But
really cool. I really like the style of it, the aesthetics of it. You have a whole kind of it's a little surreal in a way. It kind of like goes with that realistic versus semi-realistic style. I just love it. It looks so cool. So it's this is if you could explain again. So this is for a real world application, or is this is more for just like an experiment, like a game?
No. So this was for a project for a group called ID. I believe it's IDEEA, and it was basically they kind of get together engineers and designers from around the world to kind of work together on a project. And the focus was to kind of teach about design thinking. And so we had to develop out a drone, and it's a do it really quickly. Once again, short time frame. And so I was using Gravity Sketch to kind of visualize how those systems would work and how the drone would kind of operate in this environment. So
it's really cool, beautiful work.
Thank you.
Well, I think we could go for a few more minutes if there's one more thing you wanted to show, but we're kind of towards the end of our time here. Was there one last thing that you wanted to cover, or?
I think that's it for now. I have a lot of these little mini experiences, but if anybody's interested, they're all on my Vimeo and on my website as well. If you want to kind of see them there, a lot of them were projects that I did for workshops. So I was trying to, I've been trying to do some workshops and teaching at UC to kind of help people understand how to use game engines, how to program, and so a lot of those little experiences were kind of little mini experiences to showcase, like, how do you build a little mini game in Unity? How do you build a little VR product showcase? So that's kind of what those were. But
Yeah,
Yeah,
how's that been?
they're all online.
How's that been? Just if you want to talk about that for a sec, just teaching, some of these VR and these gaming applications at universities and at schools. How do you find that experience getting people introduced into the world of VR?
Yeah, the short answer is it's very challenging, and that's it's challenging because it's really teaching a whole different way of thinking, and it can be quite overwhelming because there's a lot of softwares that people need to learn. There's a lot of new concepts, and so one of the semesters, a couple semesters ago, when I was kind of working at UC, mentoring a couple students, there was two students that were really interested in VR, and I worked with them closely to kind of help develop out their projects, teach them how to use Unreal, and they were able to do really great projects, and they were able to showcase their kind of vehicle designs using Unreal. But it was a challenge. I mean, there was a lot of things. They had to learn Blender. They learned how to program using blueprints, and then animations and materials, and they even dived a little bit into Substance Painter and Substance Designer. So it's been challenging to kind of navigate what to focus on and how to keep people from being too overwhelmed by it. But it's still a lot of fun, and it's been awesome to see just how many people are starting to get into this, and even in my class and in my program, more and more people are kind of coming to me wanting to do VR, wanting to get into Unreal and Unity, and so that's been really exciting. And I love it's really I feel like it's more of a gift for me than them to be able to just ramble on and talk about this stuff. So it's been really fun to be able to kind of to teach about it and get to talk about it a little bit. But,
awesome. Yeah. I understand everything you're saying. It's such a big world. It's a small world, but very, very complex. There's a lot of tools, a lot of learning involved if you want to develop for VR and create things for VR. But hopefully that becomes simpler, more streamlined as time goes on, because that seems to be what happens to everything, right? Things get optimized and streamlined, and companies are making strides towards that. I think that's what part of the mission of Gravity Sketch is, just put the power of 3D and the power of creativity in making things in 3D in creatives' hands, and getting the software, getting the tools out of the way, and just letting you make. Is there something we always ask towards the end of our interviews as our guests, is we ask, are there features in Gravity Sketch that you've excuse me, that you found that you wished you had in Gravity Sketch, or some of your favorite features in Gravity Sketch? We always like to get feedback from the community, from our guests on thoughts on that, and so we'd love to hear if you had any ideas, and if it was just things that you like, it's like, even if it was just like, yeah, I love it, that's great too. But
well, the first couple things is I found now that ever since Sub D came out, that's just been my go-to, and it's been a lot of fun to build these 3D models so quickly now in Gravity Sketch. And so I pretty much the majority of the tools that I use are pretty much an ink tool or the stroke tool, put on a flat material to make it look like a sketching line, just that, and I'll kind of wireframe out a 3D model with that, and then just come in with the surfacing tool with low poly on and just kind of build up the surfaces. So for me, it's kind of become, with Sub D, the actual process is kind of simplified a lot in terms of the amount of tools that I actually use. But there's so much that's possible, and it's really exciting to see just how much the software changed once Sub D came out. And so that, to me, it's been really exciting to see that. And then the other thing too, I was kind of nerding out the other day when I found the Smart Move tool, and when you click and it starts to do the array, and it kind of intuitively, now it does. You can copy things at a set point along a line. I just thought that was awesome. I was doing it. I was like, oh man, this is a brilliantly designed way of getting somebody to do something without having to pull out a tool and use it. So I was really nerding out over that the other day. But in terms of features to add, I think now,
or not even added features, because it's not always about adding a feature, but sometimes evolving one. So I don't want to make it seem like But go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. I think it's not necessarily adding, but I think just kind of, I'm excited to see where CoSketch and sort of the new landing pad is going. And I think that's really, really exciting because one of the things that I struggled with at Kaleidoscope, I had pre-ordered my Quest, 6 months in advance, and I was like looking every day until it came out, when it was going to come out, and I was super excited about it. And when it finally came out, I was at Kaleidoscope, and I was using it and to just do some design work and product design stuff with them. And what's always been a challenge is being able to actually show that to somebody else, right? And so that's something that I'm really excited about, where CoSketch is going to go, and to allow people that don't have headsets to then be able to use the tool. So I'm really interested to see kind of where that goes, and I'm really hoping, that it moves into a place where I can start almost hosting, either if it's user testing type sessions in CoSketch, and to be able to actually like have somebody that doesn't have a VR headset in that environment and kind of streamline everything. Mm-hmm. So that's where I'm like thinking a lot about now, and I'm really excited to see where that's going, especially with the update that Landing Pad had recently, where you can start viewing 3D models on Landing Pad. It's hard for me to say like anything specific, but I'm just excited about where these tools are going and where these platforms are going.
No, that's great. And we definitely have big plans for Landing Pad and for CoSketch. We also are really excited to see what people do with these tools and see where it goes. And I agree. It's I think a whole new world for VR, and bringing in people that don't have headsets. What is that bridge? Because not everybody's going to have the hardware, right? And so, how do you merge the two? And I think Landing Pad is a giant step towards that. Thank you very much for your thoughts. Last thing, is there anything that you're currently working on that you want to let people know about? Anything that you're maybe going to start working on, or just something in the future?
Yeah, so one of the things that I'm actually focusing on right now is, so I'm in the semester where we're kind of developing out what our capstone or our thesis is going to be. And, to the point of VR being really complex and really difficult to use, I've kind of, over the years of talking to people and stuff, just continuously noticed that, where people don't want to get into the field because it's too challenging to use, or it's too difficult to get into like building interactive experiences. So a part of what I'm trying to focus in on for my capstone is actually developing out sort of a framework or a software that can allow people to give the ability to create interactive experiences sort of easily and intuitively. And so that's sort of what I'm kind of focusing on right now is I call it the Adobe XD of VR. What does that look like? How can you build a prototype of an interactive experience in VR without having to sit there coding a huge thing or building all these really complex nodes and stuff. So it's a very big project, but it's been really exciting. I've been starting to kind of dive into that this semester and trying to understand, how do you translate coding in a spatial medium? What sort of iconography do you use? What sort of analogies do you bake into it to kind of teach people how to build interactive experiences without them really knowing they're doing that, right? And coding without them knowing that. So that's sort of what I'm working on right now, and we'll be working on for the next couple semesters. And if it, depending on how it goes, I could be working on it longer than that. But yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much again, Matthew, for joining us today, and thank you all that joined live. You'll be able to watch this video after it's live and scrub through it. But if you want to follow any of Matthew's work, again, just check out his Vimeo. It's in the description of this video, and also his website. It shows all of his work there. Thank you very much, Matt. Appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for having me. Once again, when you approached me, I was really honored and appreciate it. So yeah, thanks.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody, and have a good rest of your week.
Yeah, you too.
Bye now. All right, that's the end of it.
Sweet.